Hello and what's up guys? In this video we dive straight into a powerful and honestly shocking conversation from Professor Pat Utomi. And trust me, what he says about Nigeria will leave you thinking deeply. He reveals how politicians have used our differences to divide us, how Nigeria has slowly lost the global respect it once commanded, and how big powers now walk into Africa without even considering Nigeria's reaction. Professor Pat also shares emotional stories from Liberia, pointing out how nations collapse when leaders choose personal comfort over speaking the truth, and he warns that Nigeria is making the same dangerous mistakes, from reckless political behavior to leaders living large while citizens struggle. Guys, I'll let you watch this video for yourself so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. Also, don't forget to like, share and subscribe to this channel if you haven't already done so. Take a look guys, and remember to share your thoughts after watching.
Professor of Political Economy and Management expert Pat Utomi says Nigerian politicians are responsible for the divisions in the country. Speaking at the first Tony Uranta Memorial Lecture in Lagos, Utomi said, and I quote, "Sadly, you will find much of today's divisions come from politicians weaponizing differences. Also, they deepen cleavages so they can pull the wool of emotions over reason to get votes they should not. Nigeria's political class has traded a vision that God cut out for us. We need new thinking if this phase is to pass Nigeria by." End of quote. Well, let's hear directly from the horse's mouth as Professor Pat Utomi now joins us on the morning show. Good morning, Prof. Good to see you on the morning show.
Good morning, Ruby. Let me break protocol if you don't mind. I was away when you celebrated your birthday, so I want to wish you a very, very happy birthday. Welcome to the club.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Well, I already quoted you, what you said at the Tony Uranta Memorial. But just a generic question. How country? What's your assessment of where we are? And what's your view about where we seem to be headed?
Yeah. You know, I think the Tony Uranta Memorial Lecture was an appropriate place to get into this because in ways, Tony Uranta, who I walked a path with, represents an era of optimism about Nigeria. When we were young kids, youth corpers, back in 1977, the optimism was extraordinary. We thought we would change the world. Nigeria was at the epicenter of a rise of the dignity of the black man. Now, you know, you and I know that this is not how Africans even feel about us anymore. The question is what went wrong. And we can delve into so many tracks of what went wrong and how it went wrong. The problem is that we are not given, unfortunately, in public culture in Nigeria, to rational analysis of how we got to where we are. And people, justify things in all kinds of ways that don't enable them get to the truth so we can fix the problem. Nigeria was hope to the black man for a variety of reasons. I take a personal example of how I became very friendly with General Joseph Namvan Garba. Garba was foreign minister when I was a student leader at the University of Nigeria. And back in 1975, I came to Lagos to invite him to engage us in the debate at the University of Nigeria as students on Nigerian foreign policy. Because at the time, the most important thing in Nigeria was foreign policy. We were called the frontline state and all of that. And when I got to Lagos, of course, the usual thing, you student, you want to see foreign minister, go and write to your dean, to this, all that stuff. Of course, I went down, waited in ambush literally for him to arrive. And as he arrived, I stepped out and said to him, Colonel Garba, I disagree with you on Angola. He said, my name is Pat Utomi. I'm from the University of Nigeria. And we began a debate, which took me past his secretary who had bounced me. Anyway, all that is history. That optimism with which we saw Nigeria's role in Africa has somehow faded. I can tell you, and I mentioned this in passing at the Tony Uranta lecture, because chairperson was Ambassador Good News Igali. When Ambassador Igali was Nigeria's ambassador to Sweden, I had a good privilege of being invited to CIPRI's hosting of Global Trends, strategic process through which the US evaluates its place in the world. It was a very small conclave, former European prime ministers, the incumbent prime minister of Sweden, foreign minister, and of course, I can't talk about what we said at those kinds of events because they are Chatham House rules. But I can say to you that one of the things that hit me at that conference, and I told Ambassador Gali because he hosted my wife and I to dinner, one very famous man, one time he was on CNN almost every day, but said, what has happened to Nigeria is that it has lost its strategic relevance in the world. He said, 30 years ago, no power, no matter how big in the world, would want to do something in Africa without pausing to ask, how would Nigeria react? It's not necessarily that what Nigeria will do will stop it, but it will at least pause and ask. He says today, they would come into Nigeria's backyard without even thinking of Nigeria. So this loss of strategic relevance in the world is a very, very painful thing. But we can track how we got here. And that is what gets to me a great deal in having a political class that is not thoughtful enough, that is not able to have the kind of conversation that I had with a young colonel called Joseph Navengarba in 1975. Because we growing up, we read Time Magazine, Newsweek, cover to cover. So when I said what I said about Angola and the foreign minister said to me, what do you mean? I gave him a detailed analysis that got to him. So when he got into his office, he said, get me Brownson, he was only secretary, get me Brownson, Ambassador Brownson Dede. So I'm going to Nsukka to go and debate these boys. That world is not, unfortunately, with us today. So much has changed. And the quality of the political class is significantly responsible for this problem.
All right. Thank you very much. You've highlighted the fact that the political class is responsible for this problem. And if we must move forward, we must have a new thinking to take us out of this phase. I'd like you to expound on the new thinking. What does that look like? How do we rescue ourselves or rescue the nation from where we are today? And I'd like you to speak broader to what's happening on the West African region as well, because a lot of the challenges, around coups and the likes could also be down to leadership and political, and the state of politics in these countries. I'd like you to just share with us.
I'm so glad that you asked that question because it leads me to a statement that defines this, talking about West Africa. When I was in grad school, my neighbor was a Liberian who one day packed his things and said he was going home. He hadn't finished his PhD. So I said to him, my friend, what did they do you? What are you? He says, look, they keep calling him from Liberia and saying things are booming. What are you doing with PhD? Come back, my friend. So he packed his things and left. I returned after my PhD, and lo and behold, very soon, Liberia was unraveling. And who becomes Liberia's ambassador to Nigeria? This is my colleague, Sirenius IV, Ambassador IV as he now was. And Sai, as we called him, will leave the Liberian embassy on Idejo Street there in VI and come to my house. I live it on VI, on Aboya Adeko. And he will sit down and say, Pat, what worries me is that when I was leaving Bloomington, you said to me, where are you going? I said, look, I'm going to, and I arrived in Liberia and things were booming and I got my Mercedes and this and that. And I saw things going wrong. And I did not speak up because if I spoke up, I would lose my Mercedes. So I kept quiet. And the politicians were misbehaving. Then suddenly, army comes. And I watch things, and I see things going on. And I said, maybe I should speak up. But if I speak up, I will lose my house, I will lose my Mercedes. So I kept quiet. One day, things just unraveled so fast that you are driving your Mercedes, somebody meets you on the street and says, hey, my friend, give me the key of that Mercedes. You come out and give him the key and say, thank God, it's just a Mercedes. Thank God I'm alive. I still have a house. Then you get to your house, and the evening somebody comes and goes, boo, 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 come out. Commandante, you won't use this house. He says, before you know it, you are in a refugee camp. Your hands are chopped off. The things, he said, Pat, you Nigerians are pouring Nigerian blood like water down the gutters of Liberia to save us. And really, truly, we are grateful. Pat, you Nigerians are spending Nigerian money like it is going out of fashion to save us. And we are truly, truly grateful. But Pat, what is wrong with you guys? You are just trying to repeat exactly what brought us to where we are. That's the way that I come to the problems of Nigeria. The heroics of the things that we did to save other Africans, we took no lessons away from them. We behaved like they behaved to get we are Sirenius for explains to me they got to. Now, if we were wise people, we would have a thoughtful guardian class that would tell us when we begin to go away from what makes sense. Look, oh, this is what happened to Liberia. That's how they got there. This is how Sierra Leone got to where they are. This is why Somalia got to the point that they got to. But we have blocked our ears to thinking people. We have allowed the political class, influenced by the rentier state, which the only thing that matters is get money, and SUV. When I see, politicians don't know how I look at them. When I see the big motorcade, I look at them, I say, this is an idiot going. The hungry country, we can't spend the resources of our country to do what we need to do to fix it, but our egos are driving us down. I took to more depth reflection, and people who have studied these things. How did societies fail through human history? Why did they get to behave in a particular manner? A number of, and I don't have the time to go into all of it, but a number of things I'd suggest to people to do. To go and reflect on Carlo Cipola's work on, idiots, on stupidity. And look at the work that has been done on idiots, tribesmen, and citizens.
Okay.
What we need to do now is begin to raise citizens, people who, of good conscience, can call their country back and say, look, this way we're going will lead to destruction. It will lead to anarchy.
Okay, Prof, thank you so much. Prof, I was just laughing at the Nigeria you had and the Nigeria we are having now. But Prof, what do you expect? All right, you said we should build a thinking population. We are building sycophants and data boys. That's what we are building. I mean, look at the ambassadorial list, Prof.
Sadly.
Look, the ambassadorial list speaks enough for you. Just look at that ambassadorial list. But let me take you somewhere. If you read Lee Kuan Yew's book, In Third World to First World, he said something in chapter 18.
Yeah.
He said, in 1975, I visited Nigeria, met many of the civil servants. They were bright. But the trouble was that they were not able to translate their ideas into action. They were too busy fighting each other for power and the spoils of office. The result was that Nigeria, with all its oil and wealth and talented people, remained underdeveloped. He further said in that chapter, I have said publicly that in Nigeria, the government ministers drive Mercedes, but the roads are bad. In Singapore, ministers take the bus or drive modest cars, but the roads are good. The difference between a society where leaders think of their country first and themselves second, and one where they think of themselves first and the country second. How can we turn this paradigm around? Lee Kuan Yew said it. Lee Kuan Yew is dead today.
Yes.
But he wrote it in his book.
When we go to, because, I spend my lifetime talking about the Southeast Asian miracle. I go there every year. I'm supposed to go this weekend. I don't know the way my body is feeling, but I will still go. In all those years, I kept giving Singapore examples. Sometimes Nigerians think it's exotic. So I stopped Singapore examples to an extent. I turned to closer examples. Cairo. Just Cairo in Egypt here. I went to an Afri-Exim meeting 2 or 3 years ago. And I stayed in the same hotel with a group of Nigerian bank MDs. And they had ordered a limo. And I think a Toyota Corolla showed up. That was a limo in Egypt for them. And they were so upset. I recall their conversation. And it just struck me about the Nigerian problem. I went to Mass this morning. As I was coming, I saw a number of cars, FG, Range Rovers. And I thought these same thoughts you are thinking. Only in Nigeria. Look, the top officials in Egypt will show up in Toyota Corolla, minister, and all of that. In Nigeria, the most expensive cars are driven by civil servants, public officials, and then the people can eat. I wondered where that logic came from. But somehow, the country of the big man arose during military rule. Although, again, to be very fair, General Obasanjo showed remarkable example when oil prices took a dip on his first watch, and he went down to a Peugeot 504. That was the head of state's official car. Everybody else went below that. And I look at what is going on now, and I think if soldiers can be smart enough to realize this, how come elected politicians are doing what they're doing with public resources? And I knew we were in very, very serious trouble. How do we redeem ourselves? Okay, a number of thoughts. I mentioned Kalu Chipola. One of the points that the Cipolla makes is that we underestimate how much stupid people dominated the world. True, he's an economic historian, went through economic history of the world, how often the stupid lead to perverse decision making. And there are so many stupid people who don't realize it. If you're not a questioning mind, if you don't think and question every time,
Prof?
The danger of falling into stupidity is a very important one.
Prof?
And so how do we find people who are willing to extricate themselves from that rank? Yes, Ruby.
Okay, Prof, sorry to interrupt you. Now, I agree with you. The crisis was long foretold. Kaplan talked about the coming anarchy. The anarchy is here. Is there hope? Mm-hmm. And where can we find that hope?
You know, the amazing thing for me is that my experience is that Nigerians are the easiest people to lead. Look, let me give you a traffic analogy. I was trying to write a book a couple of years ago to use Lagos traffic as the model for this book, but let's leave all that stuff. But in terms of choice, one of the things I found was that the average driver in Lagos, as crazy as he seemed to be, usually starts out wanting to do the right thing. Till one big man goes bad and everybody goes. And the madness is ballooned. But ordinarily, when you show good example, Nigerians are so quick to adjust. That's why I say the problem is leadership. All we need are a few leaders who do the right thing, show example, and you'll be surprised what will happen in this country.
All right.
What we need to do is bring together people who realize that we are in grave danger from what we have done to our country.
All right.
Let everybody accept that all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. And let us begin by saying, we will not do this. I give you a simple example. The Integrity Organization just celebrated 30 years. When I was an executive in industry, the Integrity Organization was then called Convention on Business Integrity. And they came to the Chamber of Commerce to illustrate the power of example and said, if we had a public event where you, the leaders of business, stand up in public, like in race course, and say, I will not give and I will not take. That is, I will not give a bribe, I will not take a bribe. That the power will be so much. And I thought, that is fantastic thinking. We're more than 60 top business leaders. I'm sure in that room, 70% of private sector GDP was there. And when they called us, only 3 people. Dr. Christopher Kolade, then managing director of Cadbury Nigeria Limited, a surveyor of blessed memory, Kukoyi, and myself. Only 3 of us were ready to say, we will not give a bribe, we will not take a bribe. And look where we have gotten. Imagine that in that room, all of us had said, I will not give, I will not take. So this is what we need today for Nigeria to have leaders that come forward and say and do.
Thank you so much. Leaders that say and do. Thank you so much for your time with us.
In today's discussion, Professor Pat Utomi offered a sobering reflection on Nigeria's current trajectory, warning that the country has steadily lost the strategic relevance it once commanded on the global stage. His remarks revisit a time when Nigeria stood confidently at the center of African diplomacy, a period marked by optimism, national pride, and a clear sense of purpose. According to him, that influence has diminished not by accident, but through years of political decision rooted in division, self-interest, and an abandonment of the thoughtful leadership that once shaped Nigeria's foreign and domestic agenda. Professor Utomi traced this decline to what he describes as the political class deliberate manipulation of ethnic and social differences to secure power. This, he said, has weakened national cohesion and eroded the culture of rational debate needed to diagnose the country's problems. He recalled pivotal moments in Nigeria's diplomatic history, from engaging global leaders to influencing African stability, and contrasted them with today's reality. reality, where major powers now operate within Africa without considering Nigeria's stance. For him, this shift is not merely symbolic, it reflects a deeper collapse of credibility, discipline, and national vision. He also drew parallels with Liberia, Sierra Leone, and other countries whose political failures led to internal collapse, stressing that Nigeria has failed to learn from the sacrifices it made to stabilize those nations. Utomi argued that the country's leadership crisis is not a matter of capacity, but of character, a preference for personal comfort, symbolic displays of power, and political patronage over meaningful governance. According to him, rebuilding Nigeria requires cultivating a generation of citizens who can think critically, reject complacency, and hold leaders accountable. Ultimately, he maintains that Nigeria's turnaround is possible, but only if leaders model integrity and take decisive steps that inspire citizens to follow. He believes Nigerians are willing to adjust and do what is right, but they must see that example from those in positions of authority. As always, we encourage you to share your thoughts in the comment section. Do you agree with Professor Utomi's assessment? And what steps do you believe are essential for restoring Nigeria's global standing? For more in-depth analysis and updates on Nigeria's political and economic landscape, kindly subscribe to Naija Star News and turn on notifications so you never miss a report. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.